Hi, I'm Emily Guzman, and I will be presenting on Chapter 7, Various Methods in Personality Assessment, which are many methods used by psychologists, anthropologists, and sociologists in studying personality. Personality assessments use psychological, sociocultural, and situational variables, and these personality assessments consist of observations, interviews, tests, analysis of life, history of material, folklore, art, and analysis of materials. Number 1, observations of behavior. This is the method that is most commonly used in personality assessments. The two main categories of observation are structured or controlled, and unstructured, which are uncontrolled. These categories can be subdivided into participant and non-participant. The unstructured observations consist of watching or recording people without disturbing or interfering in their real-life situations. This is also called naturalistic observation. The first-hand direct assessment is a big advantage. Another advantage is that the focus is not constrained by researchers' predetermined conceptual framework or theoretical bias, and very often it's used by cultural anthropologists in culture and personality studies. The non-participant observation is rare except if there's a way to do concealed observation in a way that is unobtrusive or non-reactive. The observer's presence can potentially change the observed behavior. Reactive effects or guinea pig effects is when the observer's presence is known, which is problematic in all but concealed observations. Ethical and legal problems may arise in observations in which the subject has no knowledge. For participant observation, this method is suggested to lower the chance of guinea pig effects. This is when the observer is an active participant in the subject's daily lives. When the researcher is accepted by subject as one of their own kind, the natural setting will not be affected or contaminated. Structured observations. This is when the researcher controls or structures the situations in which the subjects are put in. This type of observation can be participant or non-participant. These are typically more focused, expedient, and economically better than unstructured observations. A big problem is finding a way to structure the lab situations in a way that reflects real-life situations. Number 2 of the various methods of personality assessment is interviews and questionnaires. Interviews are a way of communicating which takes place in a particular setting. Interviewing is another common method of assessing personality. Face-to-face are an example, which are interviews, and they're the general form. The 4 main reasons why face-to-face interviews are preferred are: number 1, they're typically less structured and more flexible. Number 2, the interviewer gets a chance to establish personal rapport. And number 3, when assessing mental health related problems, the interview is able to give personal attention to a disturbed, confused subject. The subject's reaction can be observed for number 4. Telephone interviews, surveys have increasingly been used for public opinion polls, market research, and sociological survey research, which is cost effective. They're not adequate because of its limitations. A standardized interview, it is typically conducted with predetermined interview schedule, so it can be either very simple or it can be very complex. An advantage of that is that it is cost effective and aggregates data is provided for a researcher. Disadvantages are its limitations on scope of research inquiry and flexibility, and the possibility of theoretical or methodological errors or biases. Non-standardized interviews, those typically have no definitive interview schedule. Interviewing advantage is that it is open and flexible. Disadvantage is that it is costly and information may not be statistically analyzed or compared. The communication process may be inhibited or facilitated, whether it is standardized or non-standardized. That's for non-standardized interview. For innovators of communications, they are identified in 8 categories according to Gordon. These categories are: number 1, competing time demands; number 2, ego threat; number 3, etiquette; number 4, trauma; number 5, forgetting; number 6, chronological confusion; number 7, inferential confusion; and number 8, unconscious experience. There's also facilitators of communication. Those are in contrast to innovators, in which Gordon identifies them as 8 of: number 1, fulfilling expectations; recognition; altruistic appeals; sympathetic understanding; number 5, new experience; number 6, catharsis; number 7, the need for meaning; and number 8, extrinsic rewards. Number 3, problems of reliability and validity in data collection. Reliability is the repeatability or dependability of an instrument, measure, or measures that are used by researchers. It is necessary but not sufficient condition for validity. Validity is the truthfulness of measurement or the extent in which an instrument measures what it's supposed to measure. The validity of a measuring instrument has to be examined to see if it is appropriate to attain its specific purpose or aim. Content validity. It is described as the extent to which a measure adequately represents all its significant components, like accuracy. Criterion-related validity. That refers to the practical usefulness of an instrument which is used to measure a particular trait or behavior or a criterion, so its usefulness. Construct validity is the validation of the theory that is behind the measurement, or its main focus is on what is being measured to do, so the meaning of the measurement must be explained, or rational. Personality tests. These are most widely used methods for psychologists. They are standardized instruments that are used to measure personality traits of a person. What is assumed in personality tests is: number 1, stability of personal dispositions over time; number 2, prevalence of major common traits in all individuals; number 3, comparability of individual traits in terms of their strengths; number 4, the sum total of measured traits as one's personality; and number 5, the situations or conditions under which personality tests are administered are identical for all respondents. So within that, there's the objective and direct tests within personality tests. They are paper and pencil personality inventories designed to elicit highly standardized responses from the subject. They are highly structured, and the responses are objectively scored for comparative assessment. They are also called direct tests. An advantage of objective tests is that they are cost-effective and efficient for statistical analysis. And on the other hand, a disadvantage is that it is vulnerable to superficial over generalization or response distortions. MMPI, or the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, is a objective test of personality inventory that uses 4 validity skills to detect faking. Number 1, the cannot say scale; number 2, the lie scale; number 3, the frequency scale; and number 4, the correction scale. Another personality test is the projective or indirect tests. They are indirect methods of assessing personality by representing the subject with ambiguous stimuli or materials. That way, the subject's spontaneous response can be observed or analyzed. They are based on assumptions that the subject's personality dispositions are projected or reflected in their responses. Their projective tests can be categorized into 5 general types of responses. Number 1, association techniques; number 2, construction techniques; number 3, completion techniques; Number 4, choice or ordering techniques. And number 5, expressive techniques. The two most commonly used projective tests are the Rorschach test, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, and the thematic appreciation test. The Rorschach test was invented by Hermann Rorschach, a Swiss psychiatrist. It consists of 10 cards, plates, which were originally published in his book. Psychodiagnostic. And the final personality test was the thematic appreciation test. Number 5. Or not number 5, but part 5, I guess. Content analysis of life history materials. Defined a systematic method of analyzing the symbolic content of oral and written communications, which consists of selection and definition of content categories relevant to a research objective, sampling of materials that represent the content categories chosen, quantification or determination of salient categories, analysis of the quantified or salient categories in relation to other variables. These life history materials include oral histories of non-literate people that was collected by anthropologists, case histories of mental patients that were analyzed by psychiatrists, and biographies or autobiographies of famous people, letters, diaries, as well as other personal documents that were studied of psychologists and sociologists. An important point is that it relies on accuracy and truthfulness. It can be problematic because it is all subjective. An analysis of folklore materials. They're diverse cultural materials typically orally transmitted from one person to another. For example, myths, folktales, legends, jokes, epics, told speech, proverbs, riddles, superstitions, games, folk dance, festival, curse, blessing, etc. These materials tend to represent the collective psychology of people who created them. The most common functions of folklore are aiding in the education of the young, promoting a group's feeling of solidarity, providing socially sanctioned ways for individuals to act superior to or ensure other individuals. Also serving as vehicle for social protest, offering an enjoyable escape from reality, and converting dull work into play. From's psychoanalysis of Little Red Riding Hood is an example, and so is Wright's study on child training practices and folktale aggression, and Benedict's study of Zuni mythology. Those are all examples of folklore materials. Analysis of arts and music. Hughes' analysis of Western and Chinese arts and Frith's analysis of rock and roll are some examples of arts and music. Many folklore materials reflect cultural values as well as attitudes of certain groups and groups of people. There is no single method which is totally adequate for all types of personality studies. Each method has strengths and weaknesses. Deciding which personality assessment produces depends on 1. Nature and score of research, 2. Accessibility to the subject, 3. Availability of time, human, and material sources, and number 4. Legal and ethical considerations. Yes, thank you.